Imagine a business, zero production costs, infinite inventory, and the customers? They are terrified out of their minds. You cannot return the product, you cannot leave a bad review, and the price is whatever you have left. This was the medieval Indulgence racket, a billion-dollar machine adjusted for inflation, built on a single lie. The lie wasn't about God, it was about a door called Purgatory. The church held the only key, and they learned something powerful. Fear sells, but grief? Grief is a credit card with no limit. By the 1500s, the Catholic Church wasn't just a house of prayer, it was the most ruthless debt collection agency in history. Their product? A receipt for heaven. Their slogan? As soon as the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs. This is the story of Johann Tetzel, the world's first used car salesman of salvation, and the scam that broke Christianity in half. First, you need to understand the prison. Purgatory wasn't in the Bible, not really. The early church invented it. Officially, it was a temporary state of purification. Unofficially, it was a parking lot for the dead. You didn't go to hell, but you didn't see God either. You burned, not forever, just long enough to hurt. Medieval peasants couldn't read, they couldn't argue theology, but they understood fire. The priest was the only man who spoke Latin, the only man who touched the host, the only man who stood between you and an eternity of screaming. That's a monopoly, and every Sunday, that monopoly painted a picture. Your grandmother, burning, your child who died last winter, screaming for just one more prayer, one more coin. The church sold indulgences, a piece of paper that subtracted years, sometimes centuries, off your sentence in purgatory. Think of it as a spiritual get-out-of-jail-free card, but jail was made of sulfur, and the judge owned the bank. The Vatican didn't guess the prices. They published an official catalogue, the Taxa Camarae, the price list of sin. Think of it as a menu, a very, very dark restaurant. For incest between a mother and son, 3 ducats. For murdering your parents, you could get a discount. 5 ducats for a layperson, 4 if you were poor. For stealing a church chalice, 9 ducats. But here is the psychological trap. You could buy future forgiveness, a blank check for sin. Want to sleep with your neighbor's wife? Buy the indulgence before you do it. The church called this anticipatory grace. Today we call it a subscription. The poor couldn't pay cash. No problem. The church accepted eggs, chickens, or physical labor.
It will be well used.
You could literally build a cathedral wall to buy your dead mother out of hell. One archbishop, Albert of Mainz, owed a massive debt to the Pope. To pay it off, he made a deal. He could keep half the indulgence money. Half? That's not a church. That's a franchise. And the district manager was a man named Johann Tetzel. Johann Tetzel was a Dominican friar. But think of him as a stage hypnotist. He wore a robe, but he acted like a carnival barker.
Step right up.
He arrived in a town with a red velvet
Gold
box.
coins for grace.
Inside, a papal bull, a document directly from the Pope. He would set up a giant cross. He would light candles, and then he would sing.
Behold, the truth
As soon
is
as the
not
coin in the
sold,
coffer
but
rings,
revealed.
the soul from purgatory springs. That jingle was a weapon. Simple, rhythmic, impossible to forget. Tetzel understood something modern marketers know. Repetition bypasses logic. He didn't argue theology, he sold relief. He pointed to grieving widows and whispered, "Can you hear your husband screaming? For the price of a loaf of bread, you can stop it." There is a true story. A nobleman asked Tetzel, "Can I buy an indulgence for a sin I haven't committed yet?" Tetzel smiled. "Yes, of course."
Look, I have
So
a
the nobleman
proposition
paid.
for you.
Then he waited outside town. He beat Tetzel nearly to death and robbed him. When the friar recovered, he sued. The nobleman laughed. "I bought forgiveness in advance, remember?" Tetzel couldn't argue. The scam had a hole, and that hole was about to become a canyon. In 1517, a German monk named Martin Luther saw Tetzel's operation near Wittenberg. Luther wasn't a rebel at first. He was angry. Specifically, he was angry about the poor. Old women selling their teeth, farmers losing their land, all for a piece of paper. On October 31st, Luther did something tactical. He didn't burn anything. He didn't scream. He wrote a letter, and attached to it were 95 arguments against indulgences. We call it the 95 Theses. But the weapon wasn't the paper, it was the printing press. Within 2 months, all of Germany had read Luther's words. Within 6 months, all of Europe. Tetzel tried to fight back. He burned Luther's books. He called Luther a heretic, but no one cared. The illusion was broken. Peasants realized, wait, the Pope isn't saving us, he's selling us. Luther later wrote, "The papacy is a bottomless pit of greed." The church excommunicated him. Tetzel died alone, disgraced and sick. But the damage was done. Europe split into war. Protestant versus Catholic. Brother versus brother. And the reason? A coin, a chest, and a lie about a door. Here is the bitter truth. That beautiful church in Vatican City, St. Peter's Basilica, the one with the golden ceiling and the marble floors. It was built with the teeth of peasants, paid for by the tears of women who thought their babies were burning. The medieval church didn't sell heaven, they sold fear. And fear is the oldest product on earth. So here is the psychological question. What are you buying today that you're too afraid to question? If this dark history hit you like a hammer, you know what to do.